Okay, let's dive straight into a field that is, well, absolutely foundational to society, nursing.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking specifically about the pathways available in India for someone who has just completed their 12th standard and is thinking, could this be my future? What exactly are my options?
Yeah, and it's such a critical question, isn't it? For countless students, families, every single year, I mean, the role of nurses is just indispensable.
Early.
And figuring out how to actually get into the profession right after school in India, it's not always straightforward. There are different routes.
Different paths, exactly.
And knowing the details, what each one involves, that's really key to making a good decision for yourself.
Exactly. And that's precisely our mission for this deep dive.
Right.
So our goal is to unpack the essential insights from just these sources to give you, our listener, a really clear understanding.
Yeah, we'll be looking closely at what the sources are saying about the specific courses, how long they are, who's actually eligible based on, what they studied in 11th and 12th, how admission tends to work, what the costs look like, and wow, this is where you see some really, really big differences.
Oh, I bet.
And then, where can graduates actually work? What kind of salary can you expect maybe starting out and then further down the line in your career?
And just to reiterate, we're sticking purely to what's in these specific source materials. We're not bringing in outside stuff or our own opinions. Think of this as us guiding you through the landscape as it's described in the info we have.
Exactly.
Whether you're right there, trying to figure out your next step after 12th, or maybe you're just curious about how people get into this absolutely vital profession in India. So based on what's in front of us, what's the first thing that jumps out about the different options?
Well, the first thing that's really clear from these sources is that it's not just one single door into nursing after 12th grade. They lay out 3 main pathways. Each one offers, a different level of training, a different kind of commitment right from the get-go.
3 main ones.
Yeah. They talk about the Auxiliary Nurse Midwife course, that's ANM. Then there's the General Nursing and Midwifery course, GNM. And finally, the Bachelor of Science in Nursing, the B.Sc nursing degree.
Right, okay, so A&M, GNM, and B.Sc nursing. It's not like everyone just does the same thing. You've got choices, diploma programs, it sounds like, and then a full undergraduate degree.
Precisely. And the sources sort of emphasize that these different routes are designed to prepare people for different kinds of roles across, well, the huge spectrum of healthcare settings.
It makes sense.
Yeah, so the choice often boils down to where you're starting from academically, maybe what resources you have available, and where you kind of see yourself working in the healthcare system, in the longer run.
Got it. Okay, let's unpack that first option presented then, the A&M course, Auxiliary Nurse Midwife.
Right, A&M. So the sources describe this one as a diploma program. It's the shortest of the 3 main options they detail, typically lasting for 2 years.
2 years. Okay, short and sweet, relatively speaking. And who is this diploma aimed at? What do the sources say about eligibility after 12th standard?
Okay, eligibility. You need to have completed your 12th standard, obviously. But here's a really significant point that one of the sources makes a big deal about. You can have studied any subject stream in 12th grade.
Any stream. Right.
Yeah. Arts, commerce, or science. It doesn't matter for A&M, according to that source, which is, quite different from a lot of other healthcare or medical fields that usually demand a science background.
That is a major point. Wow, so even if you didn't take physics, chemistry, biology in 11th and 12th, this A&M path might still be open.
Exactly. That's what the material suggests. It makes it much more accessible, potentially. Now, the sources do mention a minimum percentage requirement from 12th grade, typically around 50% marks needed.
Okay, 50%.
But one source adds a little nuance here. It notes that for students who belong to reserved categories, SC, ST, OBC, that sort of thing, this minimum might actually be lower. Maybe around 40% or 45%, but it probably depends on the specific college.
Good to know about that potential flexibility for reserved categories. Makes sense. Is there anything else specific about who usually gets admitted into A&M, gender-wise maybe?
Yes, actually. One source is quite explicit about this. It states that the A&M course is primarily intended for female candidates.
Primarily female.
Okay. Yeah, it does add a little note saying that some individual institutes might admit male candidates, but the general picture painted by the sources is that this is largely a pathway for women entering nursing.
Interesting. Okay, so primarily for female candidates. Once someone is enrolled in this 2-year A&M program, what's the main focus of the training? What kind of skills and knowledge are they actually getting?
Well, the A&M course is designed to provide fundamental knowledge in nursing. It's very much centered around basic healthcare and midwifery skills.
Basic healthcare and midwifery.
Yeah, the sources specifically mention areas like primary healthcare delivery, maternal care, and importantly, rural health services. So you can think of it as providing those essential foundational skills needed for entry-level healthcare support roles, especially out in the community or in more rural settings.
Foundation sounds right for a 2-year diploma. Makes sense.
And how do students typically get into these A&M programs? Is it just based on their 12th marks, or are there like entrance tests involved?
The admission process is described as being either merit-based, meaning they look at your 12th standard exam performance, or sometimes through college-specific entrance exams.
Ah, okay, so it could be either.
Yeah, it seems to vary. Depends on the institution you're applying to. Some might just take the top marks, others might have their own little test.
Gotcha. Okay, so either your marks get you in or you might have to sit for a specific exam. Now let's talk about the money, the cost, because this is an area where, as you hinted, our sources show a really, really dramatic difference between types of colleges. What are the fees like for A&M? Ah, yes, the fees. This is one of the most, well, striking takeaways from the material, I think. There is a huge gap between government colleges and private colleges.
Huge gap. Okay, how huge?
Okay, so for government colleges, the A&M fees are presented as being incredibly affordable, like really low. The range given is roughly $8,000 to $25,000 per year.
Per year. Okay, that's already quite low.
But wait, it gets even lower, according to one source. That source suggests that the entire 2-year course, the whole program, could cost as little as $10,000 to $15,000 total. Maybe even less in some government setup.
10 to 15,000 rupees for the whole 2 years.
That's what one source claims, yeah.
Wow. That's astonishingly low for any kind of professional training, let alone healthcare.
It really is, and it just highlights how accessible these government institutions can potentially be. But now, contrast that with the private colleges offering A&M.
Okay, what's the damage there?
Significantly higher. The sources state the fees in private colleges range roughly from $50,000 to $1 lakh per year.
50,000 to a lakh per year. Okay, that's a massive jump.
It is. And another source gives a slightly different figure, maybe looking at the total cost, saying the range for the entire course in a private college could be 50,000 to 1 lakh. So whether you look at it per year or total, the core message is undeniable. Private is many, many times more expensive than government for A&M.
The difference is just immense.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting a government seat suddenly looks like a potential game changer for a lot of students and families.
Absolutely. It's a huge factor.
Okay, so you've navigated the fees, you've continued the 2-year A&M diploma. What kind of job roles can a graduate expect to step into based on what the sources tell us?
Okay, job roles. Based on the sources, typical positions for A&M graduates include things like rural health worker, maternity helper, and basic health worker.
Makes sense given the training focus.
Exactly. These roles really align directly with that focus on foundational healthcare, midwifery, and service delivery, particularly out in rural areas or community health settings.
Right. And what about the salary? What are the expectations for these kinds of entry-level roles after A&M?
The sources give a starting salary range for an A&M nurse. It's between about $10,000 and $20,000 per month.
10 to 20,000 starting out.
Yeah. And then they suggest that with more experience, maybe after, say, 5 or more years working, the salary could increase, potentially ranging from $25,000 to $40,000 per month. So it's presented as a starting point, with potential to grow as you gain experience.
Got it. Okay, so that's the A&M pathway in a nutshell. 2-year diploma, importantly, open to students from any stream, though mainly women, focused on basic healthcare and midwifery, potentially very low cost in government colleges, leading to roles like rural health worker, starting around $10–20K a month.
That captures it pretty well, based on the source material we have.
All right, let's move up the ladder then to the next option presented. GNM, that's General Nursing and Midwifery.
Right, GNM. So this one is also described as a diploma course, like A&M in that sense, but it requires a longer time commitment.
Longer. How much longer?
It's typically a 3-year academic program. And then, the sources add, there's an additional 6 months of mandatory internship or practical training tacked on.
Ah, okay. So 3 years study plus 6 months internship.
Yeah, so you're looking at a total duration of about 3.5 years for GNM.
Got it. A bit longer. With that crucial internship period built right in, how does the eligibility for GNM compare to A&M? Is it still open to any stream?
Okay, eligibility for GNM. Again, you need to have completed your 12th standard. The minimum percentage requirement mentioned is around 40% to 50%, which is kind of similar to A&M.
Okay.
However, here's a point where our sources show a slight but potentially important variation, something for listeners to really check depending on where they might apply.
Oh, what's the variation?
One source states that any stream from 12th is eligible for G&M, although it adds preferably science.
Any stream, but science preferred.
But the other source is more specific. It says that physics, chemistry, biology, PCB, and English are required subjects in 12th grade to get into G&M.
Whoa, okay. That's a really key difference. One source suggests maybe you can get in from arts or commerce. The other implies a science background is actually essential for G&M.
Absolutely. It really highlights the need for students to verify the exact eligibility criteria for the specific colleges they're interested in applying to for G&M. It might not be consistent everywhere.
Definitely noted. Check the specific college requirements. Good tip. And what about gender for G&M? Is it also primarily female like A&M?
No, on this point the sources are clear. G&M is a pathway open to both male and female students.
Okay, so open to both men and women. And that potential science stream requirement, depending on the institution, what's the actual focus of the G&M course? How does the training compare to the shorter A&M, especially with that extra year and a half?
Well, the G&M course provides a more comprehensive foundation in nursing care and midwifery compared to A&M. That longer duration, the 3 years of study plus the internship, naturally allows for more in-depth knowledge.
More comprehensive, more in-depth.
Yeah. While A&M gives you those foundational skills, G&M digs a bit deeper. It gives students a broader understanding and, frankly, more capability in actual nursing practices. It covers a wider range of nursing interventions, care principles, that sort of thing.
Okay, that makes sense, aligning with the extra time involved. How is admission handled for G&M programs, similar to A&M?
The admission methods mentioned for G&M are pretty similar to A&M, actually. It can be based either on entrance exams or sometimes solely on merit, using your 12th standard marks. Again, it probably varies between different institutions.
Got it. Entrance exam or merit. And the all-important fees for G&M. How do they stack up against A&M, especially that government versus private split? Does the same huge difference apply?
Yes, the fee structure follows exactly the same pattern, a dramatic difference between government and private places, although G&M courses are generally described as being slightly more expensive than A&M overall.
Slightly more, okay, but still cheap in government.
Oh yeah. In government colleges, the G&M fees are still presented as very affordable, roughly ranging from 10,000 to euro 40,000 per year.
10 to 40,000 a year, still very manageable.
Extremely. And again, one source repeats that claim about the potential total cost being incredibly low in government settings. It suggests the entire 3.5-year G&M course could potentially cost just 10,000 to 15,000 total, or maybe even less, just like their A&M estimate.
That's still just remarkable for a 3.5-year program in the government sector.
It really is. And again, this contrasts so starkly with the private colleges offering G&M.
Okay, let's hear the private side.
For private G&M institutions, the fees jump up significantly. They range roughly from 80,000 to 1.5 lakh per year.
80,000 to 1.5 lakhs per year.
Wow. And the other source gives a slightly different figure, maybe for the whole course, suggesting a range of 1 lakh to euro for the entire program. So whichever way you slice it, the gap between government and private fees for G&M is vast. It's a really critical factor that the sources keep bringing up.
An enormous financial difference there, just like with A&M.
Hmm.
Okay, once you've completed the G&M program, the 3.5 years, what kind of job roles are typically available for these graduates?
G&M graduates, having had that more comprehensive training, are prepared for a slightly broader range of roles. The sources mention positions like staff nurse, home nurse, maternity assistant, and ward nurse.
Staff nurse, home nurse.
Yeah, these roles often involve a wider set of responsibilities compared to the typical A&M roles, and you might find G&M nurses working in a greater variety of healthcare facilities too.
Right. And the salary expectations for G&M graduates, does the longer course translate into better earning potential compared to A&M?
Yes, it seems so. The sources indicate that the starting salary for a G&M nurse is generally higher than for an A&M nurse. The range given is from 15,000 to 25,000 per month to start.
15 to 25,000 starting. That's a noticeable step up from A&M.
It is. And then looking at those with more experience, again, maybe after 5 or more years, the salary potential increases further. The range mentioned is between 35,000 and 50,000 per month for experienced G&M nurses.
35 to 50,000 with experience.
Yeah. And the sources specifically mention that G&M offers, good potential for career growth and decent salary increments as you gain that experience over time.
Okay. So, to sum up G&M, it's a longer diploma, 3.5 years. Potentially requires a science background, depending on the college, open to both men and women, offers more comprehensive training than A&M, still potentially very cheap in government colleges but much pricier privately, leads to broader roles like staff nurse, and offers a higher starting salary and greater potential salary growth compared to A&M.
That's a pretty good summary of the G&M pathway as presented in the source material, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, now we move to the third and final pathway discussed in our material. B.Sc Nursing, the Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree. This sounds like a step up again.
It is. The B.Sc nursing program is fundamentally different from the first two because it's a full undergraduate degree course. It's not a diploma. And its duration is 4 years.
4 years, a proper university degree. Okay. What are the eligibility requirements for getting into a B.Sc nursing degree program after 12th grade? Is it still flexible like A&M or GNM might be?
No. This is where the subject stream requirement becomes much stricter and, importantly, consistent across the sources we looked at.
Stricter? How so?
To be eligible for B.Sc nursing, you must have completed your 12th standard with physics, chemistry, and biology PCB as your core science subjects.
Must have PCB.
Okay. And furthermore, you must have also studied English. The minimum percentage required is generally around 45% to 50% in 12th grade.
So for the B.Sc nursing degree path, that science background from 12th grade PCB plus English is absolutely non-negotiable, based on this material. No exceptions mentioned.
That's correct. It's presented as a mandatory requirement. And it makes sense, really. The curriculum of a 4-year nursing degree builds very heavily on that scientific foundation.
Right, you need that base to build upon. Okay, so what does the B.Sc nursing degree course actually cover? What's the depth and scope of the training like compared to the A&M and GNM diplomas? Must be quite different over 4 years.
Oh, definitely. The sources describe the B.Sc nursing program as providing the most detailed and comprehensive training among all 3 options. It prepares students for the widest possible range of nursing roles.
Most comprehensive. What kind of specific areas do they mention?
They mention things like learning about all the different types of nursing instruments and equipment in detail, understanding how complex environments like operation theaters, OTs, actually function, getting in-depth training in first aid, and also covering crucial aspects of basic medicine, including being equipped, the sources say, to provide primary treatment when a doctor isn't immediately available.
Wow, okay, so learning about instruments, OT functions, even basic medicine for initial treatment. That sounds significantly broader and deeper, covering more complex areas.
Exactly. Being a 4-year degree, it just delves much deeper into both the theory and the practical application of nursing care across a wider spectrum.
Got it. How is admission typically handled for these B.Sc nursing degree programs? Is it still merit or college exams or something else?
For B.Sc nursing, admission is described as being primarily through entrance exams. Competitive entrance exams are the main gateway.
Entrance exams are key here.
Yes. And the sources actually list several examples of prominent entrance exams that are relevant for nursing admissions in India. They mention NEET.
NEET, like the big medical and dental entrance exams.
Yes, the National Eligibility Entrance Test. One source specifically mentions NEET as being a pathway for B.Sc nursing admissions as well, which is interesting.
Huh, okay. What other exams?
They also mention various state-level common entrance tests, or CETs, and then there are college-specific exams run by major institutions. Specific examples given in the sources include KCET, Karnataka Common Entrance Test, exams for AIIMS nursing programs, GenPass UG for West Bengal, TSE-AIIMS SEAT for Telangana, QET, the Central University Entrance Test for Central Universities, and RUHS nursing exams for Rajasthan University of Health Sciences.
Okay, so quite a few potential entrance exams, ranging from national ones like NEET or QET to state-level ones and specific institutional tests. Competitive exams are definitely the standard route for B.Sc nursing.
That's the picture painted by the sources, yes.
All right, now the fees for the B.Sc nursing degree. How does the cost compare to the diplomas? And crucially, is that government versus private difference still as massive?
Oh, yes. If anything, the difference in fees between government and private institutions for the B.Sc nursing degree is just as dramatic, maybe even more so, than for the diplomas.
Even more dramatic, okay. How low can government fees be for a 4-year degree?
It's quite remarkable. For government colleges offering B.Sc nursing, the fees generally range from about $20,000 to $80,000 per year.
$20,000 to $80,000 a year. For a degree, that's still incredibly low compared to many other professional courses.
It is. But again, one source makes an even more astounding claim. It states that the entire 4-year B.Sc nursing degree course in a government college could potentially cost as low as 15,000 to 20,000 euro total.
15 to 20,000 rupees for an entire 4-year professional degree.
That's the figure mentioned in one of the sources, yeah.
If that's accurate.
Yeah.
My goodness. That highlights an absolutely extraordinary level of affordability provided by government institutions for higher education in this field.
It really underscores the potential accessibility, doesn't it? Assuming you can secure a place through those competitive entrance exams. Now, flip side, private colleges.
Right. What's the B.Sc nursing cost there? Must be the highest.
Yes, it's presented as the most expensive option among all three pathways when you go private. Generally, the fees range from 1.5 lakh to 2.5 lakh per year.
1.5 to 2.5 lakhs annually. Oh, yeah. And again, one source gives a slightly different perspective, maybe looking at the total, suggesting a range of 3 lakh to 4 lakh for the entire 4-year course. Right.
Which,
even if it's lower than the per year figure multiplied by 4, still represents a very substantial financial investment.
Absolutely. 3 to 4 lakhs total minimum, possibly much more based on the annual figures. The core point remains crystal clear. The cost difference between government and private for B.Sc nursing is massive.
It's a defining feature across all three pathways, consistently highlighted in the material. But yeah, the potential low costs for a B.Sc in a government college is particularly striking.
Definitely. Okay, so a student gets through the 4 years, earns their B.Sc in nursing. What kind of job roles are open to them now? How does it compare to the diploma holders?
Right. With a B.Sc in nursing, the job roles available are much broader. They often involve higher levels of responsibility and more opportunities for specialization compared to diploma holders.
Broader roles, more responsibility, like what? Graduates can work as staff nurses, of course, but crucially, they are often preferred or required for specialized areas like intensive care units, ICU, or operation theaters, OT.
Those high-skill areas.
Exactly. Other roles mentioned specifically for B.Sc graduates include nursing tutor positions, so teaching the next generation, also research nurse roles, getting involved in clinical studies, and public health nurse roles working more broadly on community health initiatives.
Teaching, research, public health.
Okay.
And leadership.
Yes. The sources also note that with experience, B.Sc graduates are typically the ones eligible for higher administrative and leadership positions within the nursing hierarchy, such as becoming a nursing officer or even a matron who often manages nursing services for a whole hospital or department.
So more specialized clinical roles, teaching, research, public health, and a clearer path to leadership. That's quite a difference. How do the salary expectations reflect this? Is the degree really visible in the paycheck?
Absolutely, yes. The sources state very clearly that the starting salary for a B.Sc nurse is the highest among the three pathways. It typically ranges from $25,000 to $35,000 per month right after graduation.
$25,000 to $35,000 starting. That's significantly higher than both A&M and GNM.
It is, and the difference grows with experience. For B.Sc nurses with significant experience, say after 5 or more years, the salary potential is considerably higher again. The range mentioned is from $50,000 to $70,000 per month.
$50,000 to $70,000 with experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
The sources explicitly highlight this significantly higher earning potential for degree holders compared to those with diplomas, both right at the start and especially over the long term.
A much higher starting salary and considerably greater potential for salary growth with experience. Okay. Beyond these direct nursing roles and the better salary, what other key advantages of actually having the B.Sc degree in nursing are mentioned in the sources? This seems important.
Yes. This is where, according to the material, the B.Sc degree really starts to stand out even more. Being a full university degree course, it apparently opens up opportunities beyond just clinical nursing roles.
Beyond nursing? Like what?
Crucially, the sources state that completing a B.Sc nursing degree makes you eligible to apply for other types of government jobs in India jobs, not specifically limited to the healthcare sector.
Other government jobs?
Yeah.
Just by having a B.Sc in nursing?
That's what the sources claim. They even list examples of sectors where B.Sc nursing graduates can apparently apply for general graduate-level positions. This includes jobs advertised through the SSC.
Staff Selection Commission.
Yeah.
The big central government recruitment agency.
Exactly. Also positions in banking, roles in the police department, and jobs within the railway sectors.
Wow. That's actually a huge point. It's not just a nursing qualification then. It seems the degree itself provides eligibility for a much wider range of public sector employment options in India.
It's presented as a really significant advantage, yeah. It demonstrates the broad recognition and value placed on holding that bachelor's degree.
Okay, what else?
Well, linked to that, the sources also emphasize the generally higher long-term career trajectory possible with a degree, leading eventually to those senior roles like nursing officer and matron that we mentioned. And perhaps one of the most compelling advantages highlighted, especially in today's world, is that the B.Sc degree is explicitly presented as the necessary pathway if your aspiration is to pursue nursing opportunities abroad.
Ah, there it is, the working abroad angle. That feels like another potentially life-changing opportunity that seems tied specifically to having the B.Sc degree.
It's a major point that the sources emphasize quite strongly, especially when they get into the kind of money you can potentially earn outside India.
Right. We'll definitely need to circle back to that. Okay, so we've now detailed each of the three main pathways, A&M, G&M, and B.Sc nursing. We've covered their duration, eligibility, especially those crucial subject requirements, the focus of the courses, how you get in, the costs, especially that government versus private chasm, the typical job roles, and the salary potential, all based directly on our source material. Now, how do these sources help someone compare these options? How do they frame the decision of which one might be, best?
Well, the sources do a good job of synthesizing the information. They start by saying, look, all three courses, A&M, G&M, and B.Sc, are valuable. They all lead to real job opportunities in the healthcare sector. They make it pretty clear that there isn't one single best course that's right for absolutely everyone.
Okay, so no single right answer.
No. Instead, the choice, according to what we've read, depends really heavily on your individual circumstances. Things like, what are your personal needs? How much time can you realistically commit to studying 2 years, 3.5, 4? What was your academic background? Crucially, did you have that physics, chemistry, biology combination in 12th grade? And also, what are your long-term career goals? What do you want to achieve within or maybe even outside the nursing field itself?
So it really comes down to a personalized decision, matching the course to the student-specific situation and ambitions. But do the sources offer any kind of guidance? Do they maybe suggest which one might be preferable in certain scenarios, even if there's no single best?
Yes, they definitely do lean towards suggesting that one option might be more advantageous, depending on what you're aiming for. While they absolutely acknowledge the value of all three pathways, B.Sc nursing is frequently described using terms like very good, or the most advantageous option overall.
Most advantageous. Why, primarily?
It seems to boil down mainly to its status as a university degree. That degree status, as we discussed, is what unlocks that much broader range of job opportunities, including, importantly, those non-nursing government jobs in India. It also provides the highest starting salaries and significantly better long-term earning potential. And crucially, it's repeatedly highlighted as the essential qualification if you're thinking about pursuing a nursing career outside of India, going abroad.
Right. So the takeaway seems to be, if you have that required science background from 12th grade and you're looking for the widest possible set of future options, whether that's specialized roles, leadership, non-nursing government jobs, higher long-term earnings, or working internationally, the B.Sc nursing degree appears to offer the most potential based on this material.
That is the strong implication coming through from the sources, yes. However, they are careful not to completely diminish the value of G&M either.
Okay, how do they position G&M in the comparison?
G&M is still presented as being a very good course. They emphasize that it offers solid career growth potential and good salary increments as you gain experience. It's positioned as a really robust choice with good prospects, particularly within the Indian healthcare system. Maybe it's seen as a great option for someone who qualifies, perhaps even without the science stream, depending on the college, and wants a strong nursing foundation, but maybe isn't immediately thinking about going abroad or aiming for those very top-tier specialized or research roles right away.
A solid, respectable pathway with good growth within India. Makes sense. And how is A&M positioned in this overall comparison? Where does it fit?
A&M is presented as a perfectly valid and indeed important entry point into the nursing field. One source particularly highlights it as potentially being a very good option for those who might come from more rural backgrounds or perhaps from economically weaker sections of society.
Why specifically for them?
Well, possibly due to its shorter duration, just 2 years, and as we saw, the potential for extremely low cost if you can get into a government institution. These factors could make it a more accessible first step into a profession for some.
Right, accessibility seems key for A&M.
Exactly. And the sources also make a very important point here. Even if you start your nursing journey with a diploma like A&M or G&M, it doesn't necessarily have to be the end of your education. They specifically mention the pathway to upgrade later by pursuing something called a post-basic B.Sc nursing.
Post-basic B.Sc nursing, what's that?
It's described as typically being a 2-year course, and it's designed specifically for nurses who are already registered and hold a GNM, or sometimes A&M, though GNM is more common, diploma. It allows them to bridge the gap and earn a full B.Sc nursing degree.
Ah, so starting with a diploma doesn't permanently block you from getting a degree later on if your goals or circumstances change. You can upgrade.
Exactly. That's a really crucial piece of information, I think. It shows there's a potential progression route. A diploma can absolutely be a stepping stone towards a degree if that's what you eventually want or need.
That adds a lot of flexibility to the picture. Good to know.
Definitely. And cutting across all these comparisons, A&M versus GNM versus B.Sc, the sources just keep coming back again and again to that stark difference in fees between government and private. They really hammer home how vastly more affordable the government colleges are for all 3 types of nursing courses compared to the private institutions.
That government versus private cost gap is clearly a central recurring theme in this material.
Absolutely. And they also mention, almost as a side note, but an important one, the availability of government scholarships. These are often available for students belonging to specific categories like SC, ST, OBC, or maybe EWS, economically weaker sections. These scholarships can further improve financial accessibility, particularly for the already cheaper government college seats.
So the financial accessibility offered by government colleges, potentially boosted by scholarships, seems like a major driving factor for many aspiring nurses in India. Based on this, securing a government seat sounds like a huge win.
It's certainly presented that way. It seems like a critical factor influencing both the choice of course and overall accessibility. And just to quickly summarize the admission part in this comparison, the sources reiterate here that entrance exams are a very common route, especially for getting into the B.Sc nursing programs. And they mention NEET again, specifically, as one example of an exam that can lead to a B.Sc nursing seat.
Got it. Entrance exams likely for B.Sc, maybe merit or exams for diplomas, and government seats are the most sought after due to cost.
Okay, so we understand the individual paths now and how they kind of stack up against each other in terms of who can apply, how much it costs, and what kind of roles they lead to. Once someone is qualified, whether through A&M, GNM, or B.Sc, where can they actually work? What kind of places hire nurses in India, according to these sources? The sources paint a picture of really diverse employment settings. Nurses are needed everywhere, basically. They list a wide variety of places. A big one is, of course, major government hospitals and associated healthcare networks.
Government hospitals, okay. Any specific examples mentioned?
Yes, they give some prominent examples like AIIMS, the All India Institutes of Medical Sciences, which are prestigious public medical colleges and hospitals. Also, ESIC hospitals, run by the Employees State Insurance Corporation, which is a big social security body. The railways also have their own hospitals and need nurses. And of course, various state government health departments run countless hospitals and clinics. These represent huge public sector employers for nurses.
Right, the whole government healthcare infrastructure is a massive source of jobs. Where else?
Then there's the extensive private healthcare sector. This includes all the private hospitals and nursing homes. The sources mention some well-known large private hospital chains as examples like Medanta, Apollo, and Fortis.
Okay, big private chains too.
Yeah. Another distinct area mentioned is the military nursing services. This is a specific branch for healthcare professionals, including nurses, within the Indian Armed Forces.
Military nursing. Interesting.
Nurses can also find work with NGOs, non-governmental organizations, many of which run health programs, and also in specific rural health programs, which, as we noted earlier, seems like a particularly good fit for the skills gained in the A&M course.
Right, NGOs and rural health.
And finally, they mention that increasingly there are opportunities emerging in corporate healthcare settings as well, maybe in large companies providing occupational health services, for example.
Wow, okay. That's a really broad range of potential workplaces. Government hospitals, private hospitals, the military, NGOs, rural programs, even corporate settings. Nurses really are needed across the board.
Seems that way, yes.
And you highlighted earlier that B.Sc nursing is presented as being pretty much essential for going abroad. Did the sources elaborate much more on that international opportunity?
Yes, they did. The prospect of working abroad is definitely highlighted as a significant and, frankly, potentially very lucrative opportunity, and it's strongly linked in the material to having that B.Sc nursing degree.
Necessary for going abroad. And how does it work? You just get your B.Sc and go?
Not quite that simple. The sources mention that to actually work as a registered nurse in other countries, they use the USA and the UAE, like Dubai or Abu Dhabi. As examples, graduates first need to clear specific licensing examinations that are required by that particular country or region. It's not enough just to have the Indian degree. You need local licensure, too.
Ah, licensing exams. Okay. Did they give examples?
Yes. For the USA, they mentioned the NCLEX, that's the National Council Licensure Examination. It's a standardized test to ensure nurses meet the requirements for safe and effective practice in the U.S. And for working in the UAE, they mentioned needing to pass exams set by bodies like the DHA, Dubai Health Authority, MOH, Ministry of Health, or HAAD, Health Authority Abu Dhabi, depending on the specific emirate you want to work in.
Okay, so getting the B.Sc degree is step one for working abroad, but then you have to study for and pass these specific country or region-based licensing exams to actually be allowed to practice nursing there.
Exactly. That's the process described.
Got it. And what about the salary potential when working abroad? You hinted it was significant. This is where the figures in the sources got really quite staggering, right?
Yes, this is where the potential earnings discussed just jump to a completely different level compared to the typical salaries mentioned within India. The sources provide some pretty striking salary figures as examples, using the UAE and the UK. They state that starting salaries for Indian nurses working abroad could be in the range of 1.5 lakh to 3 lakh per month, maybe even more.
1.5 to 3 lakhs. Starting salary per month.
That's the range provided in the sources, yes.
Wow. Okay. And for experienced nurses?
For experienced nurses, maybe those with 5 or more years under their belt working abroad, that potential figure could rise dramatically again. The sources suggest a range from 3 lakh to 5 lakh or possibly even more per month.
3 lakhs to over 5 lakhs rupees per month for an experienced Indian nurse working abroad.
According to the figures presented in our source material, yes.
That's a completely different universe of earning potential compared to the, say, 50, 70K per month figure mentioned for experienced B.Sc nurses working within India. The difference is just enormous.
It represents a truly vast difference in potential earnings, doesn't it? And it really highlights why that pathway enabling the B.Sc nursing degree, is presented as being so advantageous, particularly if global opportunities and the associated financial rewards are a major goal for someone.
Looking at those numbers side by side,
right.
Wow, it absolutely puts that B.Sc eligibility requirement for working abroad into incredibly sharp focus. You can really see the potential long-term return on investing in that 4-year science-based degree, especially if international work is on your radar.
The financial figures certainly make it a very compelling option to consider, assuming you meet the criteria and are willing to go through the process.
Absolutely. Okay, so to bring this really informative deep dive towards a close, what are the final key tips or maybe summary suggestions that the sources offer for someone standing at that 12th grade crossroads, trying to navigate these different nursing pathways in India?
Yeah, the sources seem to offer a few clear, actionable pieces of concluding advice based on everything discussed. First, if your main goal is to secure a stable government job within India, right here at home.
Okay, goal is government job in India.
Then they suggest that focusing your preparation efforts specifically towards the entrance exams conducted by major government healthcare employers is a smart strategic move. They mention exams for places like AIIMS, ESIC, or the Railway Nursing Recruitment Boards again. Basically, target the exams for the big government employers if that's where you want to end up.
Makes sense. Prepare specifically for those key government entrance exams if a government job in India is your primary target. What else?
Second piece of advice relates to working abroad. If your longer-term ambition includes the possibility, even just the possibility, of working as a nurse internationally,
thinking globally,
then the sources are quite direct. They state that pursuing the B.Sc nursing degree is presented as a practical necessity for opening up that global career pathway. You really need the degree for that.
Right. B.Sc is the key if you're aiming for opportunities outside India. Got it. And the third point?
The third point acknowledges reality for some students. They recognize that perhaps based on academic background, like not having studied science in 12th grade, or maybe due to current financial circumstances, starting out with one of the diploma courses, A&M or GNM, might simply be the most accessible or practical initial step into the profession.
Okay, acknowledging that a diploma might be the starting point for some.
Yes, and in those cases, they make sure to reiterate that important point we discussed earlier. the option to upgrade later is there. You can pursue a post-basic B.Sc nursing degree after you've gained some experience and become a registered nurse with your diploma.
Right, reinforcing that message of potential progression.
Mm-hmm.
So there's flexibility. Starting with a diploma doesn't necessarily mean you're locked out of a degree forever. It's not always a one-time final decision right after 12th grade.
Exactly. It offers a clear pathway for continued education and professional advancement down the line if needed.
That's really helpful context. Okay, well, I feel like we've truly unpacked a huge amount of detailed information from these sources today about the different routes into nursing after finishing 12th grade in India. It's been fascinating.
It's a complex landscape, for sure.
Definitely. We've laid out those three main options clearly, A&M, GNM, and B.Sc nursing. We've seen the really key differences in how long they take, those crucial variations in eligibility, especially regarding your 12th grade subject stream. We've understood the different levels of training depth they provide, from foundational to comprehensive. We've definitely highlighted that absolutely stark contrast in costs between government and private institutions, which seems critical.
Yeah, that cost factor is huge.
And we've mapped out the corresponding job roles and the different salary potentials associated with each path, both within India and including those potentially transformative earnings when working abroad after getting a B.Sc.
And I think, importantly, we've seen that while all three of these pathways lead to valuable and needed careers in healthcare, the sources really emphasize that the choice is ultimately a very personal one. It has to depend on your individual circumstances, your academic background, and your own long-term aspirations.
Right.
But, that being said, they also strongly suggest, based on the evidence presented, that the B.Sc degree generally tends to offer the broadest set of future options, the highest earning potential overall, and is pretty much essential if global mobility is part of your plan.
Well put. And just to remind everyone listening, this deep dive has been all about guiding you through the landscape of these nursing options, as presented only in the specific source material we had access to today. We focused on pulling out those key details, those comparisons, those insights directly from that material.
Exactly, and hopefully it provides some useful clarity, maybe helps frame the decision-making process a bit better for anyone out there who's considering stepping onto one of these really vital career paths in nursing after their 12th started.
Absolutely, such an important field. So let's end with a thought to ponder. Bringing all of this together, really considering those significant differences that the sources presented in terms of long-term career trajectory, the potential salary earnings both here in India and especially abroad, and that crucial factor of global mobility that seems tied to having a degree versus a diploma in nursing.
Yeah.
What would be the single most critical factor for you personally in making your decision about which path to take right after 12th grade? How might that initial choice, A&M, GNM, or B.Sc, influence not just your very first job as a nurse, but potentially the entire arc, the entire story of your professional life in healthcare, whether you see yourself staying and growing within India or perhaps looking towards opportunities far beyond its borders?